Hey, Carol. It's a different Carol.
Hi, it's a new Carol.
There's a Carol here in person as well.
Oh, okay. I think I met her a couple of weeks ago.
We have several Carols that come to Kadampa Center. There's like a bunch.
That's unusual. That's an unusual name for now. I have a question. Is this a good time? A logistics question.
Go ahead.
Okay. The logistics question is, how do we on Zoom ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah, so typically, once the instructor opens it up for questions, so it's best not to necessarily interrupt them, but what you can do is if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a little button that says reactions. And if you click that, you can actually choose the option to do a little raise your hand. So I'll do it and you can see it on me, on my, it's kind of hard to see though.
There, I did it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you got it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And so then that way I will know that you have a question. And then when there's, either Dawn or whoever the instructor is opens it up for questions, I can call on you. So, and usually I'll write you a chat and just say, hey, I'll call on you in a minute. So, and then, but if Dawn does open it up for questions, you can even just unmute and just say, hi, and start talking. Okay. So it kind of depends on the situation, but you don't want to do that if, in the middle of a teaching.
No.
And interrupt.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Linda. Yeah.
And if your camera's on, you can also just, if you don't want to do the little raise your hand thing, you can just like wave to me and get my attention.
Okay. I'm probably going to turn my camera off here in a little bit.
Yeah. So then using that little virtual raise your hand feature is always good.
Okay. Thanks, Linda.
Absolutely. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Linda.
Good to see you.
Okay.
And everyone else that has just recently joined. And hello to everyone who's watching on YouTube as well. Hi, Heen. How are you? Hi, Dinesh. Jack. Jonathan. Dan, Don. Yeah. And everyone else. Welcome. Hi, Karma. How's everyone doing tonight in the Gampa? Don't want to ignore y'all. There's a lot more people on Zoom, so thank you for coming in person. Thank you for coming on Zoom and YouTube as well. It's pretty amazing that we have the opportunity to practice either way, whichever works best for us, whether we're local or from far away. Hi, Don. Good evening. Don, there are a couple of books there that a Kadampa Center member left for you and or Robbie. So those are for you to take. Silence your phone. You gotta ask your daughter. I don't know how to use those either. So we're going to start with 3 prostrations.
The prostrations are, as I've said before, it's a good way to, it's a great antidote to, pride and arrogance, because they're the biggest obstacles to learning. But also, we're paying homage, to our, to the enlightened beings, but also our potential. Because we have that potential within us to become enlightened. So we're paying homage to our own Buddha nature, our own Buddha potential, our own potential to become, to realize the teachings, and our own potential to become a source of help and inspiration to others. So those are some of the things you can keep in mind. And then there's lots of different visualizations you can do, but we won't talk about that right now. And then there's a multiplying mantra. I love Buddhism. It has so many mantras, multiplying by like 100 million times. Makes it more powerful. I don't know where these numbers come from, but we'll go with it. But anyway, it makes it more powerful. And we can talk about mantras too. these sacred words. But anyway, Om Namo Manjushriye, Namo Susriye, Namo Uttamasriye Soha. Om Namo Manjushriye, Namo Susriye, Namo Uttamasriye Soha. Om Namo Manjushriye, Namo Susriye, Namo Uttamasriye Soha. So, we touch, I don't know exactly why, I don't understand everything about prostrations, but I know we always start out like with our head touching the crown of our head up here, and then we go, then we touch here. This is the sort of the, I guess it's the crown chakra. But anyway, we imagine light coming in here. This is body, body, speech, and mind. So we touch here, and the crown chakra, throat, and then the mind. And sometimes people, when you start here, and you can imagine white light coming in, like purifying your body, red light coming in here, purifying your speech, and anyway, it might be too much information, but anyway, blue light coming here is purifying your mind. So that's if you want to add something to it. Now, this class is supposed to be an hour, which is kind of ridiculous. It's not way too much information, but not enough time to do much practice either, but we'll do what we can. So we'll start out we'll start out doing in a moment the 9-round breathing meditation. It's always kind of a good standard Buddhist practice, just to kind of settle the mind. And you can do it. You can start out by you all have masks on. Too bad for you, but you can do it anyway. You can figure it out. But you can occlude the right nostril. It doesn't matter. You just do it 9 times. But let's say you occlude the right nostril. You breathe in once and occlude the left nostril. Breathe in and breathe out the opposite side. That's 1, 2, 3. Now we reverse the process. Left side, out the right side. And then last 3 times, breathe in both nostrils. And then out both nostrils 3 times. So great practice to get the mind settled. There's some real this practice kind of is tied into tantric practices, and there's all kinds of, I don't know, those of you who have been into yoga and stuff like that, you know about different psychic channels. I'm not that much into it, but anyway, there are psychic channels that are not, you can't find them in the anatomical lab. They're more, the central channel, they're called Sushumna, is just in front of the spine, goes all the way down to the tip of the organ, and then these 2 nadis, they go back they're like umbrellas, and they go back, and I'm sorry, they're shaped like umbrellas, but the size of the straw. And when you breathe in, again, these are more esoteric visualizations, but these 2 little channels come and join at the level at the navel. But so that might come up later on you might hear about that, but we're not going to do that tonight. So I think Lama Yeshe, teacher that I've, Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, but Lama Yeshe in particular, always made a point of setting a proper motivation for your practice. That, for example, I might have even said this in the first class, but you could, if you're going to meditate for an hour, it's better to, to spend like 59 minutes setting the right motivation, which might, I know it doesn't make any sense to us beginners, but to somebody like who's really sincere about their practice, understand that the chief factor in karma and what we want to do when we practice meditation is we want to cultivate beneficial states of mind, right? The purpose of meditation isn't just to like bliss out or levitate or have altered states of consciousness or whatever. There's a lot of garbage out there about what meditation is, right? When you hear about it, you wonder, well, but that's not what we're talking about. We're trying to build up or cultivate beneficial states of mind. And we need to understand what those beneficial states of mind are. So when they arise, we want to know that. And when these destructive states of mind arise, we want to be aware of those as well. Now, so I mentioned last time briefly that a beneficial state of mind is a mind that is conducive to meditation, tranquility, basically. And a harmful state of mind, in this particular system, is a state of mind that is not conducive to tranquility and joyfulness and these positive states of mind, and meditation in particular. So if we want to just focus on meditation in general, do you think excitement would be good for your mind? I mean, in our culture, we think excitement, yeah, we want that. But from this perspective, from a meditative perspective, it's impossible. And excitement's not conducive to tranquility and meditation. So, not that there's anything wrong with excitement, not at all. But from the perspective of this system, it's not helpful. So anger and fear and stress and anxiety and all the different mental states that destroy our tranquility. Those are the ones that we want to particularly pay attention to. I mentioned last time too that I don't think I got this right, but anyway, there was a question right at the very end about feelings. Anybody remember that question? And I don't exactly remember what it was, other than, well, we're always something about like, well, what about feelings? Something like that. And so we're going to have feelings, aren't we? Like, how often are we going to have feelings? Pretty much nonstop. So as soon as our mind contacts an object, and I'm not talking about, it could be, and in Buddhism we talk about 6 consciousnesses. Ordinarily we think of like visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory. Those big words, and tactile, right? And then mental consciousness. So whenever we hear a nice sound like a music that we like, without even a second thought, what happens? We have a pleasant feeling, right? Exactly, we do. And so there's nothing wrong with that. Pleasant feelings are going to come, pleasant feelings are going to go. It's when we cling to pleasant feelings, and and it develop a sort of an addictive quality toward these pleasant feelings. Gotta have more, gotta have more, gotta have more. It gets us into trouble. And as one Buddhist saint said, Ajahn Buddhadasa said, we're all addicted to deliciousness. We want those pleasant feelings, and we hate the unpleasant ones. So if we see somebody that we don't like, or somebody that's done something wrong, to us or to someone we love, as soon as we see that person, this time we're just talking about visual consciousness, what kind of feeling arises? It's an unpleasant feeling, right? And we're talking about feelings in three very simple terms: pleasant and sort of almost indifferent, and then unpleasant feelings. So as soon as an unpleasant feeling arises, what follows? Aversion, right? The mind of aversion. Dislike, and it can escalate to hatred and even beyond that. So one of the key practices, it is actually the key practice, I shouldn't say the key practice, but it's crucial in spiritual practice, is to be aware of our feelings. Because right after feelings comes what? It's going to be something, we're going to cling to something as something desirable. Clinging is going to arise, or aversion is going to arise, or maybe indifference is going to arise. But as these different feelings come up, so it's important to be aware, because when clinging arises for a particular object, is that conducive to meditation and tranquility? No. And it can escalate into grasping and sort of an addictive quality, right? And by the same token, as soon as we have an unpleasant feeling, again, being aware of our feelings is crucial. But we can train ourselves to not take the next step and develop aversion, and then escalate the aversion to anger and all kinds of negativity like that. So as the feelings arise, we need to become like mind scientists. We need to become very precise in being aware of our inner world and not taking the next step to, for example, in terms of desire or something attractive. It could be a person, it could be food, it could be a drug, it could be anything, but not taking the next step. The pleasant feeling arises, we notice it. Does it last? No. It never lasts. So we just notice it. Gradually, over time, we begin to train ourselves to let go, to notice the feelings, be aware of their impermanence, and just like clouds across the sky, they disappear. Nothing lasts. To everything, even you notice your body, you're just sitting here on your cushion, but in a minute you'll have to move, won't you? Because you get uncomfortable, Everything is in a constant state of flux. And our mind is the same way. So we need to, spiritual practice really happens right there between being aware of our feelings and taking the next step to either develop clinging attachment and grasping, or anger and, hatred and ill will and all the rest. And those are the biggies. So that's really important that we learn how to be mind scientists in that sense, be aware of our experience moment to moment. Yeah. So any questions about that? To be sure. Too bad that we have, the people over here, because when we've had the classes here, we've been able to have dyads where you could talk, where you could break out and talk to somebody about, well, what kind of problems did you have this week? But why don't we do that for just a minute? Talk about, why don't you pair up with somebody, if you feel safe, And I think the worst, the virus that's running around now is not the killer one that we had 3 years ago. Mostly I'm seeing snotty noses and, flu-like symptoms sometimes, but people aren't dying. So I think we're okay, particularly with wearing masks and stuff. So, find one person, introduce yourself, and talk about what your experience was this week with your practice, and particularly what obstacles got in the way of you. Maybe you didn't practice, or maybe you did, but you ran into some obstacles. So talk about what those were, and then how are you going to overcome those in the next week. So we're going to take like a 5-minute breakout here, and those of you at home, you can think for yourself.
We can do that on Zoom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we won't be able to do it on YouTube, but folks on YouTube can do it with themselves. But on Zoom, we can do breakout rooms. So I'll just open those up.
Okay.
And about how long will
Just
folks
5
have?
minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, like what have your experiences been with your practice, and then particularly what kind of obstacles did you run into to prevent you from doing the practice, and then assuming you did it, what did it take? All right, so we'll take a minute. Okay, let's bring those conversations to a close. So we'll start. So as I was saying, the key factor in there's a whole module on karma that we have in discovering Buddhism, and basically karma really determines everything from a Buddhist perspective. We're constantly planting seeds on our mental continuum, through actions of body, speech, and mind. And those seeds, and they've been planted. Some of them, we're planting them right now. We'll plant them, but in the past, yesterday, last week, last year, 20 years ago, and maybe, if you're open to the possibility, you start looking at the continuity of mind. There was a moment of mind before that, and a moment of mind before that, and before that, and before that. And what about that first moment of mind? Where did that come from? And the Buddhist perspective is that, well, there's no beginning. It had to be something like that, like a previous moment of mind. So even though obviously the body is the product of our parents', sperm and egg, that first moment of consciousness was the product of a former moment of consciousness from a previous lifetime. Now, this is Buddhism, Buddhist worldview. Okay, you may not be open to it, but when we start talking about things like this that you may not have, we're not familiar with this. In Asian cultures, it's like second nature. They don't even think about it. But for us, it's a little bit hard. But I'd ask people just to sort of creatively align with that potential that, our mind has been around from the beginning of beginningless time, and we've been planting seeds, constantly planting seeds. Unfortunately, most of them have been motivated by selfish, self-cherishing, egocentric perspective. And so those seeds will ripen into problems, into suffering. But, also from a Buddhist perspective, our motivation is the key factor in the creation of karma, our motivation. That's why it's so important. If we're going to go gardening in our mind, you might say with meditation, we need to spend a few moments setting proper motivation. So, the one that we aspire to is to, cultivate beneficial states of mind, not only for ourselves, but so we can be helpful, so we can make a difference, we can contribute to others. And so we think about this, and we even go, those of you who've been around, I can't tell how many people here have been around the center for a long time or have taken Discovering Buddhism before, but the most powerful, it's like a rocket fuel for our practice is to practice for the sake of others. Sounds crazy, but it's like, the ultimate goal, the ultimate positive attitude or motivation for spiritual practice is to help others eliminate their problems and develop their full potential. That's the most magnanimous motivation that we could have for spiritual practice. And the method to do that is for us to get our act together. to cultivate our positive qualities, to practice, to live a virtuous lifestyle, to plant those kinds of seeds that are going to ripen in happiness and wisdom and compassion and loving kindness and skillful means and all of that. So the motivation, the greatest, and it's interesting, when our motivation is to benefit others, our motivation is to become enlightened, so to say. That's the ultimate goal, really, to become enlightened in order to benefit others. Well, the byproduct of that is that all of our desires are fulfilled. Our joy, as they say, a bodhisattva's life goes from joy to joy. And that's not the goal, it's the byproduct of dedicating one's life to others sincerely based on love and compassion. So it's not an easy place to go, because it's not our default mode is what? This one. Who's number one? Moi. Look after, honestly, when I first got introduced to Buddhism, boy, that really woke me up. I went, wow, I've been going down that tube looking for cheese for so long, never found it. But then when you realize that self-cherishing selfishness is our biggest enemy, and cherishing others is our greatest ally. It's not easy to come to that conclusion, but that's something that through familiarity, through meditation, the mind can be transformed to actually have that be like a default mode, but not easy. So let's talk about just the basics, because we haven't really gotten into much of that, but we'll talk about this. So, like we said, you got to practice every day, ideally. If you miss a day, you should probably, get a little whip and beat yourself with it, or put on some kind of thing made out of hair. So, no, I'm just kidding. But, to torture yourself, no. If you miss a day, you just start again. But, the goal is to practice every day. You're much better to practice 2 minutes a day, 7 days a week, than an hour or 2 hours 1 day a week. You got to build, because we're trying to build up beneficial habits of mind. It's going to take practice. It's going to take some time. You're going to have to set aside. So if you want to do a daily practice, what do you need to do? You need to set it up. You need to set yourself up to win the night before. Right? You get to bed at a reasonable time. If you've got a little meditation room, you might want to set that up. Get your coffee ready or whatever you need to do to get yourself awakened and ready to go. And make sure that you set a time if you can. Best time to practice for most people is in the morning, because our mind's a little bit clearer. Although evening, you do it when you can. Actually, Lama Yeshe, somebody asked him one time, well, Lama, we hardly ever see you doing meditation. He said, I'm doing it 24/7. I never stop meditating. So that's really the goal, is to be able to meditate when we're sitting on the cushion, but when we stand up, when we're walking, when we're lying down, whatever position our body's in, to have that quality of mind, that meditative quality of mind, where we're cultivating beneficial habits and eliminating a negative one. So that's a crucial part of it. It's better to do short sessions than long ones. In the beginning, in particular, I think if you sit down and you try to do a half an hour of meditation, you'll probably just be cultivating stupidity, or just, you won't be disciplined. So, for example, if you're trying to develop what they call calm abiding, which Venerable Renee was talking about in the video last week, usually when you do that, you do 5-minute sessions in the beginning, because it takes such tremendous effort to keep the mind on one thing. I think for this class, I think having your sessions be 10 to 20 minutes as you become more comfortable. In fact, you may spend the first 10 minutes just spacing out anyway. So then you might get 10 minutes of good meditation. And the first 10 minutes, your mind's just going all over the place. You go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be meditating. And then you do it. So, but make your sessions, it's much better to make shorter, more focused sessions than long ones in the beginning. And then, of course, you need to avoid expectations. Is it important to have a teacher? Yeah, I think it is. I mean, somebody that had, it doesn't even have to be a Geshe-Gelik or lamas, it doesn't have to be like a great guru. It could be just a friend who's got a little bit more experience than you do that can help you answer any questions that you might have about your practice and so on. And then again, I mentioned this. This is not something that you want to, this is not something you brag about. This is not something you tell the world. Oh, guess what I'm doing now? I'm meditating every day. How cool am I? That's not what you do. This is a very personal, very private thing. And it's better to, we create obstacles for ourselves when we start broadcasting our spiritual practice. Let it show up in in the way you interact with people and in your day-to-day life. Don't have it be something that you talk about. Now, you might want to talk about it with your Dharma friends, your spiritual friends. For example, you might talk about how your practice went and how problems you ran into, things that went well, things that didn't go well, and your obstacles, and maybe some little aha moment that you had. Those are okay. But in terms of the general population, I think it's good to keep it quiet. Now let's talk let's go through the posture. I mean, I think if any of you have done any reading, how many people have been meditating for a while? Raise your hand. And then how many people know it's pretty new at this? Okay. So there's, again, usually the Tibetan tradition, we do a lot more what I'm going to call contemplative, analytical meditation, particularly in the beginning. And the more advanced practices that tends to fall away. But in the beginning, it's a big part of the practice is to contemplate. For example, your motivation for practicing. Like, why am I doing this? For peace of mind. And then we introduce the possibility that I'm doing this to develop myself so that I can be a better human being, and then thus be able to be a better greater service to others. So we take a couple of minutes, if we need to just to touch on that altruistic motivation to practice in order to benefit not just ourselves, because as we get our act together and become more together, with more tranquility, kinder, more like present in our interactions with people. We learn how to listen to them instead of the conversations that are going on in our head, and so on and so forth. Our friendships will be improved. Life will be better. But that's kind of where we want to go with this. So, but in the end, we become be able to, we can serve others too. So set up that motivation for a moment, and then you can do the 9-round breathing. I think in the beginning, but even before you do that, is to sort of, you want to get your posture correct. So there's a 7-point posture. I can't remember all of them, but maybe I will this time. But anyway, I have a knee replacement here, but it's doing really good. Thank you. And it doesn't hurt. But I could still, even before that, I could sit full lotus, but it almost killed me. Half lotus is a little bit easier. Full lotus is really stable. Those of you who do yoga and are flexible know that. I mean, you keep, that's a very stable posture. But those of us that are sitting in chairs, we want to sit with both feet on the floor, and then you want your spine straight. You don't want to lean back because that tends to make you a little bit drowsy. So you sit up. Your spine is like, your vertebrae are like coins, one stacked on another, and then we put our hands in this tradition. The left hand goes down, the right hand goes on top, and the thumbs touch. And then and you bring your hands into your abdomen, and your thumbs are right at the level of your navel. Okay? So you see how I'm doing this, like a little triangle? And now your hands, you want your palms, both of them facing up, not like this, with the thumbs touching at the level of the navel. And then you want your arms a little bit away. If they're too close to your body, if you do a long meditation, like maybe at some point you might do a long meditation and, there's no ventilation, This is good to have let your arms a little bit away from your body. Your shoulders are sort of back and down, not slumped forward. Your chin slightly tucked in. The teeth are not clenched, so very relaxed. Your mouth, even I know Thich Nhat Hanh says we should smile like the Buddha. I like that. Just a little, but and the tongue is at the roof of the mouth, and again, the chin slightly tucked in, tongue at the roof of the mouth, the eyes. A lot of people meditate better with their eyes closed, but generally the instruction is to have them either, maybe a third or quarter open to let the light in, because it keeps us more alert. But if you find that causes distractions, then you can, at least in the beginning, you can certainly close your eyes. But it's good to develop the habit of having your eyes slightly open to let the light in. And again, it just keeps the mind more alert. And just check out the posture again. The spine, again, if you can sit on the floor, full lotus, half lotus, whatever's comfortable, but you definitely want to be in a stable, comfortable position, and one that you can stay in and not fidget, because that'll destroy your concentration. Spine straight, shoulders are a little bit back and down, but relaxed. The chin's tucked in, the tongue's on the roof of the mouth, just behind the teeth. That's to channel saliva, so you're not, again, when you're meditating for any length of time, if you're always, going swallowing saliva, it's going to disrupt your concentration. So the tongue is at the roof of the mouth, just behind the teeth, and the eyes slightly open or slightly closed. It's said that just sitting in this posture has a tranquilizing effect on the mind. It settles the mind. As much as possible, we don't need to move. We want to be still. And then it's good to do a little, we've all done these practices before, where you start at the top of your head and go down to your feet, or you could start at your feet. Just check your feet out and notice if there's any discomfort and relax that. And then bring your awareness up to your calves. Relax those muscles in your knees and your thighs. Just let go of any tension that you might experience there. And then your pelvis and lower abdomen. And your chest and lower, mid, and upper back, shoulders, forearms, arms and forearms, hands. And then go back to your neck, relax the muscles of your neck, scalp, your facial muscles. Just scan your body. Anywhere where you're holding any tension, allow that tension to dissipate. And we're going to we'll do a simple practice. It's just counting, but you don't have to even count. You can count to 10. Sometimes we go out and in one, but it doesn't matter. You could go in and out one. You can go, but one cycle is one. So let's say we exhale and inhale, and that's one. Exhale, inhale, that's 2. Exhale, inhale, 3. And continue that up to 10, if you can make it that far. If you can, that's excellent. Most people probably can't. But when you lose count, you just gently come back to 1. Start again. Simply begin again. Now, without counting, this time just mentally make the note in, out, in, out. Just use that way of noting to stay present. And when you're observing the breath, it's not just for one little microsecond of the inhalation. You're watching the entire process as the air comes into the body, and then at the end of inhalation, there's a moment where where the breath turns and the exhalation begins. So you're following it all the way out. And then at the end of exhalation, it turns, it comes back. So we're staying with the breath the whole time. And when we're distracted, which we will be, we just, again, gently but firmly, our contract with ourselves is to focus on the breath. That's our contract. So it's a weird word, I know, but just bring your mind back. But there's a great example of this in the teachings where they have a wild elephant. They call it the wild elephant of the mind. And if you tether an elephant to a huge pole, in the beginning, it'll struggle, but eventually it'll settle down. And the mind's the same way. We just bring it back as often as we need to. But again, in this particular practice, we're going to note in and out. No, not important to count, but just stay with the breath. Now you can relax your awareness and bring your mind back to the room. So did anybody get distracted? Yeah, it's, this is like, whoever said this was important? Nobody ever taught me this, said that this was like an important thing to do. It's not part of our culture, is it? That a disciplined mind, that a focused mind. I mean, we all know if you're sitting in class and your mind's, you're daydreaming about your boyfriend or girlfriend while your professor's presenting an important subject, you're doomed, unless you can go back and get somebody else's notes. So concentration is good in business, is good in life, is good all the time. But there's a way to train concentration, and that's what we're doing here in our meditation practice. This is, this is from this is kind of an old book. I've had it a long time. I'm trying to remember when it was published. Anyway, a long time ago, 1991. And the Dalai Lama was at Harvard, and there were a lot of people there. The people know the name Dan Goleman. I think he was the guy that popularized emotional intelligence. He was the one that was one of his biggies, and he's a Buddhist. Well, I think Goleman sounds very Jewish to me, but I know he's a Buddhist practitioner. He practices not only Vipassana, but the Tibetan tradition. Anyway, he gave a talk at this conference on the Tibetan and Western models of mental health. Now, Dan is a PhD psychologist, right? And so he was contrasting Western mental health disciplines versus the Eastern ones, and he talks about the mind and mental factors, which we'll talk about a little bit. We've already talked about some of them, but positive, basically every moment is made up of a mixture of feelings and different mental states arising. And if we're having a positive, or what we call virtuous mental states, then it causes happiness, and non-virtuous negative mental states cause us to be miserable. Well, anyway, I don't want to read much of this, but it just at the very end, he's talking about Western psychology and Buddhist psychology, I guess. He says, but the telling differences in the methods, the means to mental health that exist in each system, Western psychology versus Buddhism. I think this is one place where they could be fruitful interchange. By and large, psychotherapy focuses on the content of consciousness, right? If you're sitting there and a therapist, you're talking about your experience, the content of your consciousness, right? Today this happened, that happened, this is how I felt about it, blah, blah, blah. The conscious, it does not attempt the more radical transformation posited in Tibetan Buddhist approach, which focuses on the process of consciousness. Buddhism seeks to free the individual from negative states of mind by altering the workings of perception and cognition. Okay? So the method to do that is meditation. He said, for this reason, I think the similarities in mental health systems between the systems are on the surface. Western methods do not really attempt the changes in the deep structures of cognition and personality that Tibetan Buddhism proposes. Then it goes on to, he's talking about so I'll just read this. Daniel Brown was a Harvard-based psychologist too, who was quite renowned. I don't know if he's still around, but anyway, this is just one last quote from him. He said, Freud once said that the most we could hope for from psychoanalysis or psychotherapy was to replace neurotic conflict with everyday unhappiness. The meditative traditions take up where he left off. They provide a method for focusing on everyday unhappiness and finding a way out. The way involves training attention so that you gain voluntary control over perceptual processes and eventually undercut the roots of the reactivity of ordinary biased perception. This eliminates a great deal of suffering, since the basis of that suffering were in those mechanisms and that reactivity. You thus become the master of your own mind and experience. And then he says, finally, and in his conclusion, he says, it's quite different from Freud's, that Tibetan Buddhist psychology shows us a way for civilization to grow beyond its discontents. So if anybody's interested, this book has been out a long time. It's by Wisdom Publications, but there's a lot in here. The Dalai Lama gave some talks and like that. So any questions about what happened, meditation practice, whatever we just did?
And of course, if you're online, just
it's much
get my
easier
attention.
to ask questions if you're online because we can't see you. So any questions or comments about your little practice that we did here?
Oh, we do have a question online.
Yeah.
Carol Potter, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Carol Potter?
Hi, it's me. Okay, so my question is, hold on just a second. There it is. Okay, so my question is, what are your thoughts about guided meditation such as those provided by Tara Brock?
Oh, by Tara, yeah. Well, they're different, aren't they? You know, if you think about Vipassana practice in general, I mean, you're still using a process of noting, you know? I know a little bit about, I don't know Tara Brock personally, but I've seen some of her videos, and I've spent quite a bit of time in Thailand doing those practices, so I understand it. They're slightly different, lots of different meditation techniques. For example, if you're doing Vipassana, you are using your mind to note dukkha and change and no self, right? Those are the three principal instructions in Vipassana practice. And you're trying to note dukkha, change, and no self in every moment of mind. All right. Now, in the guided meditations that we do, for example, we do guided meditations, but we try to do, the idea is to come to some conclusion. Like, for example, you know, we do meditation on death and impermanence, and it's a little uncomfortable for people, but I'll do it anyway. You know, we remind ourselves, first of all, life is really precious, isn't it? It's going so fast. You know, I heard a great example of this the other day. Somebody said, it's like we're born with a big bag of money, coins, and we're always, you know, we're always spending the money. Like for every breath, it costs you a coin. For every action, every time you wake up in the morning, everything you do is constantly costing you money. This is one way to look at it. But you don't know when you're going to run out. You might run out tonight, or you might run out 5 years from now, or 20 years from now, or 50 years from now. You don't know. Every moment is so precious. Okay? But that's the added. So we meditate on death and impermanence in the Tibetan tradition. First of all, we think about it. We think, okay, everybody dies. I'm going to die. Every moment brings me closer to the moment of my death. Nobody lives forever. It's going to happen to me. And then the conclusion we come to is, I must practice the Dharma. This is if you have faith in the Dharma. I must practice the Dharma because I'm going to die. And then we think, contemplate, well, it could happen any moment. You know, there's no guarantee there's no guarantee I'll be here tomorrow. You know, we look at all the things that are supposed to be good for us, like medicines and food and cars and planes and things. They can all become the source of our demise. You know, there's no guarantee that the moment of death, it won't happen tonight. Lama Zopa says, it's really good attitude. This is Lama Zopa Rinpoche. He sends me, I get a Christmas card from him periodically. He says, I pray that you'll have a happy death. I think that's wonderful, because if you can die, if you know that you have the composure and the whatever it takes to die with a happy mind, your life will be blissful. You'll have it together. So again, death is definite. The time of death could be any moment. So get that. Lama Zopa says, wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to die today. This is it. It's going to be over today. And live that life like it's your last day. And then we say, okay, I could die any moment. Okay, I must practice the Dharma because I could die today. All right, I'm going to die. It could be any minute. I got to practice the Dharma. And I got to do it now. And then we look at like, okay, what's going to help me at the time of my death? When I'm on my deathbed, is my 401k going to help me? You know, the amount of money in my bank account, all my possessions, my family, my kids, my vacations, all the stuff on my bucket list that I checked off. Any of that going to help me at the time of on my deathbed? You know, when I'm facing my demise? No. The only currency we can spend on our deathbed is our spiritual currency, the imprints that we place in our mind stream. And how wonderful it would be to able to die with a peaceful, happy, mind, thinking about others even. And sending others thoughts of love and compassion. Everybody who's dying right now, may whatever fear or whatever I'm experiencing suffice for everybody that's dying right now. And may I send them, thoughts of love and compassion and letting go and just, moving on, like that. So there's, we do those kinds of meditation. Death is definite. I must practice the Dharma. The time of death is indefinite. I must practice it now. The only thing of any benefit at the time of my death are the spiritual imprints that are placed on my mind. So I must practice the Dharma now and practice purely. And then we think about those 3 points until we get some feeling for it. I must practice the Dharma now and purely. And then we hold it. There's a feeling, there's a conclusion and a feeling that goes with that. We've done the analytical part. Now we do the placement part. No more thinking. We hold the mind on that experience, the conclusion, the feeling that goes with it. And then, of course, the mind gets distracted, and we can either end the meditation there, or we can go back and do these contemplations again. Death is definite. Time is indefinite, must practice. The only thing of benefit at the time of death is our spiritual practice, spiritual realization. So anyway, that's how so it's different, isn't it? There are many, we'll do meditations on karma, we'll do meditations on dukkha or suffering, we'll do purification practices. Many different, Tibetan Buddhism has many wonderful, powerful practices to help us wake up. For example, developing bodhicitta, or this awakening mind that we talked about, is the most powerful motivation for practice. And you may not be ready to be open to that, but at least you're open to your own happiness. Well, I'd like to be a happier person, and then take it a step further so I can be a contribution to my family and my friends and the people at work and like that. It's a good place to be, good attitude to have. So, yeah, go ahead.
Good. So when you said during meditation to keep your eyes open a little bit, that was the first time I ever heard that, and that really helped me. Like, I felt like I was able to focus a lot more on it. Is that, sorry also if you answered this, but is that kind of the default for meditation, to have your eyes open a little bit, or is there a better method?
No, that ultimately that's where you'd like to be able to do it, because like I said, having a little bit of light come in, keep the mind more alert. So if you can do it, if that's easy for you to do, then good for you. I mean, when I first started doing it, I couldn't do it, and then I started staring a couple of feet at the floor in front of me, but it was a soft gaze, not a like that. But yeah, the whole point is to let the light in to keep the mind bright. And we talked about, there are 2 big obstacles. We'll talk about the obstacles to meditation next time and some of the remedies for it. But it's a good start. Yeah. So let's do the dedication prayers. Forgot to do refuge and bodhicitta, but there's only so much time. By the way, I realized I've given you 2 books to read. One is How to Meditate, and this, and I've actually found it on Audible books. I was so happy because I don't like to read that much. And the Audible books is great on that. And this is a newer version. The first version of how to meditate that Kathleen did was about this thick, but they've added a lot of information to it. But anyway, it's an excellent book. If you wanted to listen to the Audible version of it, you could do that. And then the other book, Mindfulness in Plain English, is quite different. It's much more about the Vipassana techniques but they're all Buddhist practices, and they all lead to wisdom and mindfulness. So but right now I'm focusing more. If you're going to pick a book, then this is the one to use for this class right now, although we can talk about the other one. People have questions. So let's do the dedication first.
So if you're here in the Kadampa and you have a gold prayer book, they're located behind your seat or on your table. It's on page 32, 33.
Yeah. Okay. So again, the point of dedication, it's a kind of a strange word, but it's like I think of it as like we're acknowledging the fact that we've done something virtuous, we've done something positive, we planted, we've been gardening really well, and we planted the good seeds, the ones that are going to ripen into beautiful flowers and healthy trees and all of that. And so we need to acknowledge that we've done something positive, but we also want to send this positive potential toward something really fantastic, like the benefit of others. Not just ourselves, but others. So dedication is important. At the beginning of every practice, it's important to set the motivation, and at the end is to do a dedication. So we're going to dedicate our practices not only for our benefit, but the benefit of all living beings. So we'll say it that way. May all beings everywhere, plagued by the sufferings of body and of mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with the mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, so we'll start again next week, and the homework will be posted. Basically, I think it's you can be as flexible as you want. I think sitting for 10 to 20 minutes, whatever's comfortable for you, but I think you need to push yourself a little bit. You want to sit up, do the posture that we went through, scan the body for any areas of tension, then maybe start out with the 9-round breathing, and then you can just follow the breath, whatever practice you find that you're most comfortable with. You may already have a daily practice going. I mean, for some people, it's just easier to count. For other people, they don't. It's a distraction, and they just like to watch the breath without saying anything. It's completely up to you what practice benefits your mind the most. By the way, the most profound teaching in all of Buddhism for you is the one that helps your mind. It's not some, esoteric this or that. It's the teachings that are beneficial to your mind right now. That's the most profound teaching for you. So we'll do this again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And Brian Wright, who will be leading the discussion group, is out of town again this week, so we're hoping that he will start that next week. So, and that'll be available on Zoom and in person. So for those of you who want to join the discussion group, hopefully it'll start next week, and it would just follow immediately after class. All right, everyone have a great week. Leith, do you have a question?
Yeah, I can ask you directly or whatever. So I'm just curious, like what we just read. So in metaphysics, they actually think that having that thought can change someone else or affect disease. So are we wishing for those changes, or do we actually think cause and effect? As we say that prayer, are we actually healing these diseases so they don't come again? Or is that more a wish or a hope?
It definitely is a wish, and when we do prayers, we're planting seeds
In our own mind stream or in the
our own
universe?
mind stream. In our own mind stream, yeah, it changes our world. When we change our mind, we change our world.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Drive safely for those of you
Thank
driving.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Hane.
Hey,
Bye,
I do
Nate.
have. Hey,
Oh.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
If it's okay, as we clear out, this is so basic and fundamental that I'm almost embarrassed to ask, so I waited till the end.
Go for it.
All right, I'm on this medium right here that we're using, and I am distracted by seeing myself, which I'm pointing at me right there. I feel better turning that camera off because it's affecting my ability to concentrate.
Yeah.
Is that any kind of a big deal?
John, go ahead. You
John.
look like you have an answer.
Well, first of all, there's a technical answer. Up in the top right corner of your Zoom, you can click on that and you can find the hide self view. So that's just one thing that you can do to hide your camera. But the other thing is that as we get into meditation, we know that we are always berated with all of these different distractions. And do you want to do, the recruit level of distractions, the medium level of distractions, the advanced level of distractions, and if you can take one of those distractions away by hiding your self view, you're going to kind of tamp down that like ego thing. That
it feels really narcissistic
all the time.
We
There's
do
another
tend
group I
to-
meditate with, and
We do tend to stare at ourselves like, like as though we're looking into a mirror. So Don, the question was, a Zoom student is distracted by seeing himself on the camera. So is it okay to just, turn the camera off or hide self view, which thank you, John. I'd never really paid attention to that. There's a choice for hide self view or hide non-video participants. I learned something new tonight. Yay. So go ahead, Don, you have an answer?
Well, I didn't know was there a question?
Well, just whether or not it's okay to should we work through that distraction or just go ahead and turn our camera off so we're not staring at
I think in
ourselves?
the beginning, you make it as easy as you can for yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, once
Thank you.
once you develop a little bit in your practice, then you can turn the camera on and see how it goes. But I think in the beginning, honestly, it's always easier to meditate when there's no sound, no distractions. I mean, that's the perfect location for developing concentration in any kind of meditation practice. But it's hard to find those places. So if you find something on the Zoom that's a distraction, by all means, if you can eliminate it, you should.
And here in person, we always have thanks, Tim, we always have the train that goes by that helps us practice our meditation while we're here. It's literally like right outside the window here.
I love the
it
train.
feels so narcissistic to be going, the thing that's really